Was this your path? Was this your path that you needed to roam down?
Well, I know today it was the test. It was the journey God had me, the cross that I've carried, so I can do what I'm doing today, share and help other people with everything that I've been through.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
The rabbit hole is hard to see when you're approaching its edges. Not until we fall deep do we realize there is nothing around to arrest the fall. We are left to drop like a stone, never knowing when the bottom will emerge from the darkness. The fall down the hole is never a straight drop. Many times you hit the edges and possibly slow the descent. But as the momentum picks up, a hard crash is an inevitability. When you finally reach the bottom and look up, there are two possibilities. You either hope you die, feeling resigned to your fate, or that hope allows you to climb that much harder. The ascent from the bottom builds your character, so that by the time you make it to the top, you are not the same person that fell down the hole. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Falace, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming suffering or overcoming adversity, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. Follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, another California boy. I love it. I love it. I love it because you're tanned and we're starting to get paler and paler as the winter comes in. And that's Anthony Autry to talk about the suffering of discipline. Now, Anthony, your path to getting out of that hole all comes from your discipline, and I love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as retired police, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust Toyota of Hackensack. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. They're great guys over there. So, Anthony, each week we take a question from our audience. This question comes from Taylor5727. Why is it important to pass on what you learned? I see you out there, I look at your Instagram, I look at your videos, and you're always imparting some knowledge. And I can tell when you're saying it from your heart. But it's got to have some importance to you. You just don't talk to hear yourself talk. So do you have any idea what that is?
God has given me quite a testimony. And so I've had quite my share of suffering and pain. And a lot of it, all of it was self-inflicted. And so I believe just by doing what I'm doing today, passing on my testimony, sharing with everybody, if I can just help anybody from going down the same roads I've gone down, help anybody get out of addiction that I had suffered from for a long time, it's just all worth it because it's really not necessary. You know, it took me a long time to figure out how long. It just wasn't necessary. So, I mean, if I can just help anybody, just one person, it's all worth it. You know?
That's it. It's just that one person. It's one person with the ears open and the heart open enough to hear you.
Absolutely.
That's it. I'm on a similar page with you. I'd like to fight for a different answer, but I do like that one person because it's my debt that I owe. I owe that debt because people came into my life at just the right time and lifted me up when I really needed it the most. Here's the secondary benefit of that. The secondary benefit is when I reach somebody and their ears finally open and you see that light bulb go off in their eyes, that is the greatest feeling ever.
So true. 100%. I feel like I get more out of it sometimes than they do.
Right. So it's not totally selfless. I don't go into it with selfish motives.
No.
But when you hit that note.
Beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. It's a symphony when you hit that note.
100%.
So Taylor5727, thank you for sending that question in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. 5.5 hour plane ride, 5 hours, 40 minutes. You come in. You had some chances to think about a lot of the stuff that you wanted to talk about here, and I'm going to throw it because we're not even going to talk about you. No, we're going to talk about your past.
Let's do it.
I want to know where you grew up, and we just had a conversation off air that I could probably spend this whole podcast on because your father met Elvis, and I'm very jealous of that, but God bless him. But I want to know where you grew up, how you grew up, what the environment was like.
was born and raised Pacific Palisades, which is close to Brentwood, Santa Monica. It's an upper middle class neighborhood, and so I was a standard family. Everything was really good. Never saw my parents fight or anything. We used to do family vacations. We would go to Mammoth, go snow skiing. We had a boat out in Lake Havasu. We would go out there. So it was very fortunate.
Lake Havasu. I was just by Lake Havasu. That's where the London Bridge is. That's I drove right past it. I'm like, I know where, and I was saying it wrong the entire time. Lake Havasu. Okay.
Yeah. So seemed like it was just a very normal upper middle class upbringing. I played sports. Again, never really saw any problems with my parents. Had a younger brother that was 3 years younger than me, and just grew up playing sports, doing normal kid stuff. Got into martial arts. My father got us into Kempo. I think I was 3.5 is when I started. And so just normal playing sports, was going to private schools. And I was...
Your father seems to be hitting all these marks. Like there's all these marks that every father wants to hit with their child. You try not to fight in front of the kids because you know that's going to affect them growing up. You try to get them involved in sports because you realize there's value to sports other than athletics. He puts you into martial arts, which is going to give you that discipline.
Right.
Can I ask you this? It's kind of a weird question. Sure. Your mother or your father, how did they grow up? Did they grow up in a good household, bad household?
My father's father wasn't around very much. He had some issues, so he was gone. He's actually was born in New York. A lot of my family is in Buffalo. We're Sicilian. And so, but he grew up in Los Angeles. My grandmother remarried George Autry, who is Gene Autry's cousin.
I'm glad you said it because somebody was going to ask that question. Without a doubt, somebody was going to ask that question. You get any of that Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer money?
Absolutely not. So if somebody's out there, I could use some of that, you know. But also, it was not a very healthy environment for my father. So he played sports, did really good in football. He was dating a cheerleader that was a year older. She ended up getting pregnant when he was like 17. So he had his first kid at 17, second at 19, and third by the time he was 21.
Oof.
So he was looking to go to college for football, but immediately had to start working, carried 2 jobs, did the family thing, and then about the time he was 26, they ended up separating.
Well, at least he manned up and he did what he was tasked to do. Hey, listen, you're going to do that? You better own up to it.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
He's never had a problem manning up to things. Yeah.
But the reason I asked that is because he's hitting all these marks. You're telling me all these things that he did for you, and I'm assuming he did it for his brother, your younger brother?
Yes, sir.
Did it all that stuff, and he's doing everything right, and he's doing everything to give you the opportunities maybe he didn't have. And I'm interested to where this is going. I just wanted to paint that picture.
Oh, it's good. That's great. Yes, he's always been there throughout my life, and still is there today. And so we still have a very close relationship today.
So when did you start straying from that disciplined lifestyle? Like, was it middle school? Was it high school?
It was about middle school. So mother comes from the South. She comes from a very has about 6 siblings, and Southern hospitality. So she's a Southern
pleaser.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And so it was actually Christmas Eve. I was about 7 years old. Brother was about a few years younger. Christmas Eve, my parents came knocking on my door. I was jumping on the bed, and they came in, said that they were going to get a divorce. And I guess I apparently laughed at them. I don't recall this, but laughed at them. Wasn't really sure that they were serious. And then in the morning time, my father was actually gone. So I remember going downstairs. Mom was by the Christmas tree, and she was kind of sitting there, kind of hunched over. Went over and kind of put my arm on her, was, supporting her. And then my brother came down. I remember this vividly. He came down and like grab a hold of my leg, and it was just like a real moment of reality struck right then.
What was the reasoning?
This was the early 90s, and so my father owned a construction company, had about 60 employees. He had made it through the previous um, housing crash, which was about 20 years prior. Then there was one there in the late 80s, early 90s, another housing crash. We had a bunch of houses on the market, and bank took over a few houses, so there's a lot of financial restraints that caused some issues within the relationship with my mother and him. And for whatever reason, they both regret that choice. I think if there was one thing they both could have done differently, they would have not done what they did.
So it appears like everything on the surface of the pond is nice and cool and
Right.
serene, but they're underneath the water. They're a duck in the pond. Their feet are going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, and this is what I have a lot of respect for, is they never outwardly appeared to show that to you. You didn't even take it serious when they said they're getting a divorce.
Yeah.
So that's actually that's my hat's off to your parents for having the fortitude to have, because it's painful going through that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it had to affect them personally,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying their best to co-parent and be good father and mother to their children. And so they go their separate ways. You're
Correct.
7 years old. Now, all of a
Correct.
sudden, this guy who is in your life, sounds like he was a good dad, is not around as much.
Correct. Not as much. He wasn't staying there, but he would come pick us up a few days a week to take us to school. He was still present at all the sporting games. He'd come, take us to the park to practice baseball. So he was still present, just wasn't there in the house. That point in time, getting a little bit older, 8, 9, I kind of used that as an excuse to get into trouble. So through those years, 7 to 10, I was getting kicked out of all the private schools. So about 10 years old, I then started going to public schools. And the fifth grade then is when I first started smoked pot, smoked weed, and was drinking alcohol.
Thought you were cool doing
Thought
it, right?
I was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was real cool.
I'm seeing that now. I got a 15-year-old. And I know some of the kids that are in his grade are experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they think they're so cool. And it's all fun and games until something grabs you that you don't want it to be you don't want to be grabbed by.
Yeah.
So it was just weed, drinking alcohol, parties, between 10 and 15.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So between 10 and 15, it escalated pretty quickly. So by the time I was 15, had already moved in through the pharmaceuticals to the psychedelics, had done cocaine a little bit. Through those years, I think I was maybe like 13, and one of my friend's older brothers had overdosed from heroin. So I had stayed away from like the heroin and the meth, but everything else was game.
So was it readily available? And you got to educate me a little bit on West Coast drug trade when it comes to that.
Sure.
Those things were around here. They were certainly available. They weren't readily available. Marijuana, of course, readily available everywhere. Heroin, so. Cocaine was around.
Mm-hmm.
But, those other drugs, they were harder to find. The psychedelics were hard to find.
Yeah, I guess maybe just Los Angeles being such a metropolitan, with such a
Dawn of the hippie movement.
it was. I mean, it was everywhere, and so like the Pacific Palisades is an upper middle class, almost pretty much wealthy neighborhood, and so a lot of kids there had money. So,
Well, that's the big mistake a lot of parents make. They're in a bad school district, so they try to send their kids to private school. Well, what is one thing private school people have? They got money. So all the dealers who are smart will go and sell to them because they can buy it. Yeah, it's a mistake of parents. Hence my kids are going to public school.
Yeah, I think we're looking to have kids here, and I think we're probably going to do some kind of like co-op kind of home kind of thing. Just
I know they can accelerate quicker with that stuff. I have a little bit of experience. I know some friends of mine that homeschool their kids, and they're able to accelerate them at a much quicker level. But the problem I see with that co-op, that homeschool stuff, is the socialization.
mm-hmm.
That's the problem I see. The ones they're not all of them, but some of them, they a little socially awkward. And that's, your father got you involved in all that stuff. Would you go down that same path with your kids?
Not sure. It's definitely something I'd have to look into a lot more. But it's just, I know everything. It's probably a little bit of what I experienced personally growing up through just, the different schools and the environments and the groups of people that I were around that really played such a heavy influence in my life.
Well, do you remember
So,
the first time that what did you do first? Did you take a sip of alcohol or did you smoke marijuana first?
uh, I was sipped alcohol and smoked cigarettes before I smoked weed.
And what was the thinking behind it? Was there just a group of kids doing it?
Yeah, it was the close group of guys that were friends. Most of them had older siblings that they would get, their weed from and stuff like that. And so it was just to be part of that cool group of kids. Oddly enough, it was the same group of guys that were in the Boy Scouts with me. I was in the Boy Scouts, so I actually did eventually get my Eagle Scout. So, but yeah, it was just this group of guys that I wanted to be part of.
On paper so far, up until minus out the drugs and alcohol, on paper so far, you're on a collision course with some sort of success in your future. You have everything there. You have all of the tools, but sometimes the tools aren't enough. You have to have it inside of you to get there. So you escalated. When you were in high school, what was your favorite? What was your favorite thing to do?
I skateboarded a lot as a kid. So I skateboarded from when I was, through those years when I was younger, all the way up into high school. But I also played sports. So in high school, I was playing football. Did pretty good. Sophomore, junior year was getting pretty good. Actually, even went to like a running coach, and was prospecting. And then the coach wanted me to play a position that I didn't want to play. So I had the I was smart guy. I was like, I'm not going to play anymore if I'm not going to play the position I want to play. So, that's where probably some of the self-sabotage really came into effect there. And then I was started to, a couple of buddies that I had known from middle school up and through high school. Like you said, there's a mix of kids going from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. And so I started hanging out. I had some friends that were in like the Rampart district area in LA. So it was a little bit different than the Pacific Palisades. And
A little culture shock.
yeah, well, I got along just fine with them. I was just about like one of the only white guy that was in the neighborhood there. But so it was just by that time things were getting serious. It went from being when I was a younger teenager to just having the little crew. But then once you got into high school, guys then were like getting from gangs and stuff like that. And some of the gangs there, mid-city Los Angeles were pretty heavy.
They're pretty serious.
Yeah, pretty serious stuff.
Now, this whole time you're going down this downward spiral.
Hmm.
Your parents, what's going on with them? Are they losing their minds, trying to get you help?
I think I was 13, 14, something like that. Mother had met a guy. He was a professor at UCLA, had started a lot of the orthodontics department there. She was in that field of work prior. That's what she was doing when they had met. So once they got divorced, she got back into the field, and they had met. He had asked her to marry her, and she came and asked me about my opinion, and I had asked, okay, well, does he make you happy? She said yes. I said, okay. I said, is this what you want to do? She said yes. I said, okay, well, I support it. So they got married. It was a little bit of a red flag to me. They said they were going to get married in Greece. I said, okay, well, when are we going to Greece? And she was like, oh, well, just me and him are going to go. You and Angelo aren't going to go. Okay. So that was kind of a red flag and a sign of things to come. So at that point in time, after they did get married, he was retiring and he was in the Navy Reserves. So he wanted to retire in Coronado. So they were moving to Coronado. I went down there initially and I didn't really fit in too much in Coronado.
Nice place, though.
Very nice place.
It's a very nice place.
Very nice place. And so me being the little skater, punk kid, whatever, wasn't really as acceptable as it is today back then. So my father was living with his girlfriend at the time, who was actually the girlfriend he had been with since my parents split up. They said that I could move in with them. So I moved in with them. I was there for a couple of years. Things didn't really work too much. I would be gone over the weekend, come back Monday, and that's, I'd be at friends' houses where we were just partying and doing all that stuff. So it was a couple of years, and then it was like, hey, you need to do better. I was really trying, in my opinion. They said, if you're not doing better, you're going to have to move out when you're 18. So when I was 17, I had an opportunity to move out. A girl that I was dating at the time, one of her neighbors was like, hey, if you pick up my kid from school, help him with his homework, you can stay in an extra room here. Okay. So I took advantage of it before I turned 18, didn't have anywhere to go.
It there was it ever heavy-handed with your father or your mother saying, "Hey, listen, get your shit together"?
I think it was, when father had left and I was with mom, she was really doing everything she could to make sure we were okay. So I think at that point in time is kind of when it was like, really being tough on us was hard for her because my father wasn't around.
The divorced parent syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I was with my father, like he wanted to be there. I mean, we had a very close relationship. We used to, when I was playing football, we'd get up early before school and go hit the gym, go work out. Some of the fondest memories I have of me and my father is, going and hitting the gym in the morning before school. He would also go with me when I was in the Boy Scouts. We had gone down to Mexico. Like, he's always been present. He's been at all of my games. So we have a very close relationship. But when I was living with him, I just would always want to be gone. And I was at friends' houses that were, their parents lived in Topanga Canyon, which is where a lot of those parents were like the hippies of LA. When they moved out from the 60s, they went up into Topanga Canyon.
Okay.
So I used to spend a lot of time in Topanga Canyon.
A lot of freedom out there, I'm assuming.
A lot of freedom, yeah.
I'm looking at this, and I guess what I'm doing is I'm trying to dive deep and find out how a child with such opportunity loses it when the parents, and there's nothing there that says why this is happening other than you're using it as an excuse that your parents left. And by that, it's enough. That's enough. But there's no markers. It's not like you were abused, sexually or physically.
No.
It sounds like you were a good athlete. Probably popular because you were a good athlete. You have the personality to do it. So I'm looking for that one thing. It's like, oh, that's it. And other than the divorce, there's nothing there. It's just, was this your path? Was this your path that you needed to roam down?
Well, I know today it was the test. It was the journey God had me, the cross that I've carried, so I can do what I'm doing today, share and help other people with everything that I've been through. But it's always been my addiction. Really, had me around certain people, had me in certain places, doing certain things. That
Were you looking for something? Just companionship with a friend. Some people have that. The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques. Uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryAllsup.com.
The friends was a big thing. Then when I was out on my own, I was with a girlfriend, and a couple of my buddies were getting in really serious trouble here in town or in Los Angeles. One of my buddies was then on the FBI's most wanted, for a lot of homicides. He was on there with Whitey Bulger, and So I was just like, I wanted to leave, get out of California. And so I got out of California, kind of hoping to go to school. I went to Arizona, I was in Tucson to try and buckle down and get into school.
Change of venue might change your way of thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I found myself out there and wasn't going to school, was still just trying to survive, was selling a little bit of weed, had picked up a small job doing, I think it was timeshare, stuff like that, and was just spinning my wheels, wasn't really getting anywhere. Again, my addiction was heavy, was doing a lot of cocaine.
And what ages are you right now?
At that point in time, I was 19, 20. I was 20, 21.
Mm-hmm. So it's time for you to start getting your life together, but you're sort of just kind of lost in the desert.
100%.
Yeah. So how bad did it get?
Got pretty bad. Was at that point in time, I was one incident that I still suffer from today. Was at a party, a little housing complex, college party. I had been drinking a lot, and one of my buddies gave me my keys back. We went to go leave, and so on our way back to my place, was speeding and hit a little pedestrian curb island. Floorboard came up flat with the car, shattered my right foot, broke my left foot. I was the only person that got injured, thank God. But totally just destroyed my right foot. I mean, I still suffer. I walk with a limp. I got like 2 plates, 24 screws in my foot. So, I mean, that's something that I carry from a silly thing that I did when I was in college. So that happened then. I moved out of Arizona at that point in time. A little while after I recovered, went to Austin, Texas. Was in Austin, Texas again to kind of get back into school. Again, didn't get back into school. I just found myself working. I started working for a sales company. It was a fundraising company. I started actually doing very well. I was only there for like a few weeks. They asked me to be in management. I started managing a section of the office. Then I started managing a larger section. Then I was managing the whole office there for a few years.
While you're in the throes of addiction.
While I was in the throes of addiction.
So you're a true functioning addict at this point.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem.
Yeah, and you were probably successful, if I had to guess.
I was okay. I was okay. I mean, I definitely wasn't. I didn't have a lot of materials, but I was getting by. There was a lot of struggles though. There were struggles. There was times where through these travels and everything, my mother would actually help me out. There was one time I fell on some hard times, and she helped me get into another apartment. So I wasn't having a lot of success, but I was just barely able to keep the thing going.
So your parents always stayed present, right? They were always somehow, you were in contact with them. You never left contact with them at all?
Yeah, I've always had contact with them.
So I was, this is one of the things that I'm not very proud of in my life. So there was a kid, and I was probably 22, 23, and he's fatherless. He's about 16 or 17. And so I would take him to the gym with me, we'd work out, sort of just give him a little bit of mentorship a little bit. And so I move on with my life, and he moves on with his life, and we sort of just lose contact. Well, one day I come into work, and they say, "Hey, this kid's asking for you," and they say the name, and I'm like, "What's he want? What's he want? I haven't talked to him in years." Well, he said he knows you. Turns out the kid got hooked on heroin, right? And so I call his mother, and his mother said, "Yeah, I had to move, and I couldn't tell him where I was, because when he was living with me, I had to sleep on my purse because he was stealing money." It was just, it was heartbreaking to me. But I remember grabbing this kid, and I grabbed him by his collars, and I said, "What the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, what are you doing?" And I was so mad at him. I said, "If you're going to continue to do this shit, don't mention my name ever, ever." But it was something, I was really hurt when I lost that kid. Like, he's back now. He's back, but he did prison time. He was sexually assaulted in prison. He had to go through some trials and troubles, and I'm saying that because your parents are losing you, and it's got to be eating them alive. It's that pain that only a parent can feel when they're trying so hard, and they just don't know what to do. Pretty much, it's the time to throw your hands up and say, "I don't know what else to do." Tell me some of the things that they tried, other than your mom helping you out financially.
It got worse. It got a lot worse. So it was at that point about 2007. I was supposed to this sales company I was working for. They were going to open an office in L.A. I was supposed to go back open that office. They ended up giving it to one of their family, one of the owner's family, somebody. So they wanted me to go to Modesto. I was like, I'm not going to Modesto. So went to San Diego. My brother had started a construction company. Had been gone from family for a while. So I went to San Diego, jumped on board with the construction company, kind of helped get that to grow. And then and we were partying a lot. We were doing a lot of cocaine, stuff like that, spending a lot of money because we were making a good amount of money with a construction company.
Young kid with money. Oof. It's a horrible mixture.
If I just had some of that money.
And living that close to Tijuana don't help either.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we would go everywhere though. I mean, we'd be L.A., San Diego, Vegas, we'd go all over the place. At that point in time, I still hadn't gotten in trouble.
Never been arrested.
I think I had I think I had a refusal for a DUI.
Okay.
That was about it. Then 26, and we were up in LA. We had gotten to LA. My father was actually he was a super on a custom spec house that some investment developing was going on in like Bel Air, Brentwood area.
High end.
I think we ended up working on a bunch of these houses. Smallest one was like 9,000 square feet. The largest one was like 19,000 square feet. All custom spec stuff.
And for those of you who don't know Brentwood, it's where O.J. Simpson lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did Bel Air? Yeah, Bel Air, Brentwood.
And that's where Will Smith lived, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I saw the TV show.
So things were going really good. I had gotten connected with a girlfriend that I had known from high school who turned out to be just absolutely cuckoo. And so she had attacked me one night, and I ended up getting in trouble for it. Long story short, I had bite marks all over me. Me not knowing the system took a deal which made me a felon and was the worst mistake I ever made. If I had known what I known today, I would have just taken it all the way to trial. They would have dropped it. They would have gotten tossed out. I mean, it was just she was lying in her testimony, all sorts of stuff. So,
But you just want it over with.